Hello, everybody. Welcome to our presentation in Gender Studies in Film. I'm Nyla Watkins.
I'm Morgan Pendergrass.
I'm Alani Escobar.
And I'm a best additive.
Okay, so quickly we have our table of contents, the description of the project, methods of data collection, preliminary research and analysis, and contributions to the field. So for first, our background and interview. We decided to observe and study the Spelman and Morehouse documentary film students and the Spelman Film Fusion Club specifically. And the motivation for choosing to observe this particular group was to dive into the creative intricacies of what it means to be Black women and men in the film industry and to create their own stories. The film industry as it exists today is riddled with racism and sexism, and Black women and men, but Black women in particular, have to work much, much harder in order to just be recognized for their brilliance and to be given leading positions and roles behind the camera. And this led us to the question about how does this reality impact Black women who are pursuing a career in this film industry? This led us to our overall research question, which is how do gender dynamics impact and influence the distribution of labor on film sets and film production?
And next we have the description of our project. So we were studying the Spelman docufilms and Spelman Film Fusion students. The Spelman Film Fusion Club is a creative space where student filmmakers and artists can come together, collaborate on projects, and share ideas to export each other's growth in film. And they focus on career readiness. And they have panels with professional people in the industry, workshops, and internship networking. And here's a description of our observation. The field site was the Spelman College LOC2 auditorium. The participants were Spelman and Morehouse College Film Fusion students, and this particularly was a 72-hour film festival set. And our observation contributions, our positioning in the auditorium allowed us to view a full scope of the set and interactions within the set. The auditorium was very big and had echo within the auditorium, which helped us hear their interactions clearly.
So for our methods of data collection, we observed the film students during their 72-hour film festival. They had to do things like write, film, and edit the film called 90 Days from Friday to Sunday at 5 p.m. We observed their creative process while they were filming on the second day of the challenge. Their film set took place in the LLC2 auditorium. We collected qualitative data through things like interviews and observations. Our observations of the film fusion group's interactions, the body language, film language, roles, and more provided us with insightful data to analyze that will further aid us in answering our research question.
So for our observations when we were on set, a few things we've seen. One was the set was mostly Black women, especially Spelman college students, and there were about 4 men helping and getting instructions. One person handled the slate, and 2 people worked on the camera, and the girl in purple seemed to be the director. The second thing we observed was the atmosphere felt very calm but still very professional, and the director communicated clearly with everybody, and when new people came in they were very welcome, so the space felt very supportive and open to everybody. The third thing was most of the people had a very artsy style, like in graphic hoodies, flannels, and baggy jeans. Some of the men even had locks, and one had an afro with purple flower in his hair. The fourth thing we observed was the men working on the production side were very quiet and more reserved, and they didn't really seem familiar with everybody on set. And the male actors seemed very more comfortable and talked more with the women on set. The fifth thing we would observe was there were a lot of film language being used, including like cut, scene, take, slate, camera set, quiet on set, and speeding. It showed how everyone communicated in like a very focused and professional way.
And here are our main interview questions. Our first interview question is, do you believe gender plays a role in how responsibilities are distributed during production? How so? Second question, how has your film set slash film industry experience in Spelman in comparison to outside sets? Or if you have not yet experienced film sets outside of Spelman, what do you think the difference in how your film set experience will be within Spelman slash Film Fusion versus the industry? And lastly, what does Spelman Film Fusion mean to you, and how has it impacted your film journey?
So for the interviews, I interviewed Jocelyn Williamson. She's a second-year doc film major. When answering the questions about gender dynamics on set, she didn't really see gender roles, like gender plays a really big role in how labor is distributed. She said, even when we're here at Spelman, working, and some people from Clark and Morehouse come on set, I don't see any gender rivalry here. But she said she knows that in the big leagues, like the industry, on the real world, it's very different, but she feels like they're slowly becoming better at like equality within the roles and creative community. But in her like outside of Spelman, in her internship during the summer, she did feel like some of the pressure of being like actually in the industry. She said that she was the only Black woman, the only person of color actually in the internship, and everybody else was like white. And she said, I felt that in that space, I had to prove myself in a way, and I needed to make sure I'm the best here and on my P's and Q's so I don't misrepresent my community. And she said she felt like it was definitely something that was different than being here at Spelman because the Spelman community in the network is so strong. So this kind of shows the different pressures that Black women face in the film industry and to really like be the best in order for their brilliance and their creativeness and their talents to really be recognized. And yeah.
So my interview was with Braylon Dyson, who is a second-year theater and performance major at Morehouse College. And this quote here is, he says, well, to me, I just recently discovered this actually, but I feel like working with women is a lot better. It's a little better. I just have to say, I feel like they understand what's actually meaning to be portrayed and not what looks cool. Lighting, how the lighting effect is supposed to be, doing that. They really understand the story, and I feel like they really get to the point, and they know how to structure the story all throughout the film. So yeah, I feel like women in film are definitely, getting up there 100%. So I would say that Braylon definitely had a positive experience being on a majority women's film set. And Braylon also worked as the gaffer, which is the lighting and moving the lights around. And he said he pretty much just did what the director asked of him, but he was content with his role and position. And he actually, I would say that he liked the roles that gender played. Actually, he preferred being on a women's set. Yeah.
So I interviewed Alyssa Wilson, who's a second-year doc film major. And her quote was, being in a space with all Black women is a lot more comfortable, and it gives you the freedom to maybe try new avenues. So this was more so in response to the third question, what does Spelman Film Fusion mean to you, and how has it impacted your film journey? And basically the main theme that I got from discourse with her was her mainly suggesting and alluding to the fact that women feel freer to take on certain roles or even experiment more creatively when not overshadowed or just, male dominated norms aren't persistent in their creative space. And I genuinely feel like from her perspective, it was easier to do things like interact with, encourage, and, help out people that have similar experiences as you, or, you guys are trying to portray a certain image the same way, with the same views and experiences. So that was just one of the main themes from our interview.
So I interviewed Lydia Scott, and she is a third-year doc film major at Spelman College, and she's also the vice president of Film Fusion. And one quote that she said that really valued with me, or it was when talking with Morehouse men in Film Fusion, women in film are more in depth with their work than men, and women are emotionally driven and they are more openly vulnerable when speaking about their work. So when she said this, it really like highlighted how women often bring like emotional depth and openness to their work. And she talked about like how women aren't afraid to explain their ideas fully with the team and be vulnerable with their creative process. And this definitely helps set a tone of honesty and collaboration on the team. And it also shows how gender shapes communication in film spaces and in teamwork. And women tend to go deeper in their work while some men stay more surface level. And that emotional depth is actually like a strength in filmmaking, I'll say, even though it isn't always valued the same.
So now getting into our preliminary research question and analysis.
So we found two important articles about women in film and or really gender equality in film, and one was about gender in camera work and the other talked about women and men in film and TV overall, and both show that women, especially Black women, have less access to high level positions in production and film. So for our analytic findings and from the research, a few things that stood out to us were women get less recognition and leadership chances than men, and they are definitely underrepresented in camera departments, especially on bigger projects in film. And people stereotype camera work as too physical for women and view that as more of a men's job and has nothing to do with women. And for a long time, writers' rooms and production crews were mostly male, and it definitely shows how gender shapes who gets certain jobs on the set.
And getting into why this project is feasible, this project really bridges a gap, a significant gap that in anthropology, film studies, and gender studies by shedding light on underrepresented communities of filmmakers, especially Black women filmmakers. As we've seen that being in Spelman and on Spelman like sets, Black women are really able to take leadership roles and positions and tell the stories that are really important. Even in anthropology, and the documentary is so interconnected about really sharing the stories about other people and really bringing them into light and bringing visibility to them. So this project would further shed light on bringing visibility and telling the diversity of different stories.
So for contributions to the field, our anthropological research is relevant to the field as film productions are more than simply workspaces. There are cultural spaces in which hierarchy, gender, collaboration, and identity are very vastly and dynamically displayed. The particular context of professional Black women leading in film at Spelman College offers a unique perspective from which to gain insight into the role of gender in creative labor, particularly in areas where Black women are underrepresented. This research examines how power and identity are performed in the division of creative labor in film productions, demonstrating how underrepresented social groups approach collaboration in contrast to the practices of the dominant film industry. Our research contributes to anthropological discourses regarding power and identity.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.